Hello, assalamu alaikum. My name is Adnan Iqbal. I welcome all of you. And today, in this video, we are going to start a new topic, which is the cardiovascular anatomy. So, before we start to talk about the cardiovascular anatomy, let's discuss what is cardiovascular system. Now, in the cardiovascular system, you can see the word cardiovascular, which is being made by two words. Cardio means the heart, and the vascular means the blood vessels. So the cardiovascular system is the system of the heart and the blood vessel. So in the cardiovascular system, you can see this is the cardiovascular system, and it consists of the heart, and these all are the blood vessels which are all over the body. And the cardiovascular system is a closed system. Why we call cardiovascular system a closed system? Because the blood flow in the heart and the blood vessel is continuous, and it is flowing in the heart and the blood vessel again and again, and it is not leaking out from these blood vessels or from the heart in the normal condition. So therefore we call the cardiovascular system as a closed system of the heart and the blood vessels, because the blood flow from the heart to these blood vessels is continuous, and the same blood is flowing in these blood vessels and the heart again and again, and it is not leaking out from these blood vessels. So this is known as the closed system. And what is the what is the function of this cardiovascular system? The function of the cardiovascular system is to provide the nutrition and the oxygen to the tissues all over the body. And how this cardiovascular system is providing the nutrition and oxygen to all over the tissues in our body? Because you know that in these blood vessels the blood is flowing in these blood vessels, and it is going all over body by these blood vessels, and the oxygen and nutrition is present in the blood. So wherever the blood goes, the oxygen and nutrition goes with the blood, and by this cardiovascular system the blood is supplying the oxygen and the nutrition to the tissues all over the body. And in this blood vessels, we have different type of blood vessels, and one blood vessel is known as the arteries, and arteries are those blood vessels which take the blood away from the heart, and these blood vessels are being denoted by the red color because they are the blood vessels which carry the oxygen rich blood. And veins are those blood vessels which take the blood towards the heart, and these blood vessels are being colored blue because these blood vessels contain the deoxygenated blood, or the blood in these blood vessels are oxygen poor. And capillaries are the smallest vessels, are the smaller blood vessels within the tissues where the oxygen or the nutrition exchange take place. Now let's try to understand the different types of the blood vessels, how the blood comes out from the heart, goes into the tissues, and then the blood comes again back to the heart. So when the blood comes out from the heart, the blood first goes into the arteries, and then the arteries are further divided into the small arteries which are known as the arterioles. These small arterioles are further divided into the smallest blood vessels which are known as the capillaries. So the blood from the heart comes into the arteries and the arterioles, and then comes into the capillaries where the gas exchange take place. So the blood which is coming into the artery, this is the oxygenated rich blood, and the oxygenated rich blood goes into the capillaries through the arteries and the arterioles, and in the capillaries the gas exchange take place. So the oxygen from the blood goes into the tissues through the diffusion, and then these capillaries, after the diffusion of the oxygen to the tissues, these capillaries are then reunite to form the small veins which are known as the venule, and then these venules further reunite to form the large vein. So the blood from the capillaries after the gas exchange, this blood after the gas exchange becomes deoxygenated. So the deoxygenated blood from the capillaries comes into the venules and then into the veins, and this deoxygenated blood through the venules and the vein comes back into the heart. So one thing you should keep in mind clear, that in the capillaries the gas exchange take place, the blood do not goes or blood do not leak out from these capillaries and goes into the tissues and give its oxygen. The oxygen from the blood is going into the tissues by the simple diffusion process. The blood always remain inside these blood vessels in the normal condition, and the blood do not leak out from these blood vessels and goes into these tissues by leaking. So therefore these blood vessels are also known as the closed system, because the blood always remain inside these blood vessels, and the oxygen from these blood vessels, the oxygen from these blood which are present in these blood vessels, the oxygen is going into these tissues only by the simple diffusion process. Now let's discuss about the location of the heart and the size of the heart. Now all of you know that where the heart is located. The heart is located in the thoracic cavity. This is the thoracic cavity, and the heart is present between the lungs, and the space where the heart is present between the lungs, that space is known as the mediastinum. So the heart is present in the mediastinum area. And what is the mediastinum area? The mediastinum area is the area between the two lungs where the heart is present. And you know that the heart is being enclosed by the ribs, and you know that we have 12 ribs on the right side and 12 ribs on the left side, and the space between the ribs, this space between the ribs, this space is known as the intercostal space. So the space between the ribs are known as the intercostal space, and this dark color, which is a part of the ribs, this one, these are known as the costal cartilage. These are the costal cartilages, and the costal cartilages are giving rise to the ribs. So these one are the costal cartilages. We have 12 ribs each on each side, and the space between the ribs is known as the intercostal space. So these are the clavicle bones, one on each side of the body. This is the left clavicle bone and this is the right clavicle bone, or simply we say the clavicle bone as a collarbone. So what is right mid clavicular line? So in this clavicle bone, if this is the mid of the clavicle bone, and if we draw an imaginary line through this mid clavicle bone down the axis, then this is known as the clavicular line. And if it is on the left side, then this is known as the left mid clavicular line, and if it is on the right side, it is known as the right mid clavicular line. So these clavicular lines, these imaginary clavicular lines, are being drawn for telling the location of any organ, which in this case is the heart. And if we look at the heart, this is the base of the heart. This area, this is the base of the heart, and this down area where the heart ends, this is known as the apex of the heart. So the base of the heart lies at the second intercostal space, This is the first intercostal space between the two ribs, and this is the second intercostal space. So the base of the heart lies at the second intercostal space, and the apex of the heart is at the fifth intercostal space on the left side of the body. Whereas the size and weight of the heart of the well-trained athlete is more as compared to the normal person heart size and weight. The reason being uh, because of the exercise, the muscles of the heart becomes more like of the skeletal muscles. So that give rise to the more size and weight. And this is the reason because of the strong muscles of the heart of the well-trained athlete, the heart pumps the blood more efficiently in a well-trained athlete as compared to the normal person heart. Now we will try to understand the chambers of the heart and how the blood flows inside the heart. Now, if you look at the heart, this is the right side of the heart and this is the left side of the heart, and the upper portion of the heart has the atria and the lower portion has the ventricles. So the heart has two atria, one on each side, and two ventricles, one on each side. And the atria are being known as the receiving chambers. The blood from the body comes into the atria, and the ventricles are known as the uh, contracting chambers or the pumping chambers, because it contracts and propels the blood out from the heart into the systemic circulation and the pulmonary circulation. So what really happens, the deoxygenated blood from the lower body comes into the heart by the inferior vena cava, and from the upper body by the superior vena cava. So the deoxygenated blood comes into the heart by the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava, and the blood comes into the right atria. And then from the right atria, this deoxygenated blood goes into the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle it goes into the pulmonary trunk. This is the pulmonary trunk, and then this pulmonary trunk is being divided into the left pulmonary artery and the right pulmonary artery. So the left pulmonary artery is going into the left lung, and the right pulmonary arteries are going to the right lung. So this deoxygenated blood, which is poor in oxygen but rich in carbon dioxide, this blood goes into the lungs by the pulmonary arteries, and in the lungs the gas exchange take place, and the blood will pick up the oxygen in the lungs and remove the carbon dioxide, and then this oxygen rich blood comes back to the heart by the pulmonary veins into the left atria, and from the left atria it goes into the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle it goes into the aorta and then to the systemic circulation. And when the blood comes out from the heart, from the aorta, this oxygenated rich blood goes into the arteries, and from the arteries it goes into the arterioles and into the capillaries where the gas exchange take place. The blood will remove the oxygen, and the blood oxygen will go into the tissues, and then the blood again becomes deoxygenated, and then this deoxygenated blood by the veins come back to the heart, and this cycle repeat again and again until the person lives. So we have two types of circulation. One is known as the pulmonary circulation and the other one is known as the systemic circulation. In the pulmonary circulation, the blood is going to the lungs, whereas in the systemic circulation, the blood is going to all over the body. And in the pulmonary circulation, the blood is going to the lungs by the pulmonary circuit, and in the systemic circulation, the blood is going all over the body by the systemic circuit. So in the pulmonary circulation, the pulmonary circuit transports the blood to and from the lungs, where it picks up the oxygen and delivers the carbon dioxide for the exhalation. Whereas in the systemic circulation, the systemic circuit transports the oxygenated blood to virtually all tissues of the body and returns relatively deoxygenated blood and carbon dioxide to the heart to be sent back to the pulmonary circulation. Also, the pulmonary vein is the only vein in the body which is carrying the oxygenated blood, whereas the pulmonary artery is the only artery in the body which is carrying the deoxygenated blood. Whereas you know that the arteries are the blood vessels which are carrying the oxygenated rich blood, whereas veins are those blood vessels which carry the deoxygenated blood. So if we talk about the valves of the heart has four valves, and the job of the valves is to prevent the backflow of the blood. So it prevents the backflow of the blood from the ventricle to the atria, or from the aorta or the pulmonary to the ventricles. So in between the right atria and the right ventricle, a valve is present which is known as the tricuspid valve. And this valve is known as a tricuspid valve because it consists of three flaps or three leaflets. And between the left atria and the left ventricle, a mitral valve is present, or we can say mitral valve as a bicuspid valve because it contains two leaflets or two flaps. Also, between the ventricle and the pulmonary trunk, a pulmonary valve is present, and in between the aorta and the left ventricle, the aortic valve is present. So the mitral valve and the tricuspid valve are controlling the blood flow between the atria and the ventricles, and the pulmonary valve and the aortic valves are controlling the blood flow out of the ventricles. So our exploration of more in-depth heart structure began by examining the membranes that surround the heart, the prominent surface features of the heart, and the layers that form the wall of the heart. Each of these components play its own unique role in terms of function. Now, for example, if this is the heart, and you can see that the heart is being surrounded by the membrane. For example, this is the membrane, and if we magnify this area, so you can see that the membrane that directly surround the heart, that membrane is known as the pericardium. So this is the pericardium of the heart, and you can see the pericardium is being further divided into different layers, and the most outer layer of the pericardium is known as the fibrous pericardium. So this is the fibrous pericardium, and this layer these layers, this inner layer and this inner layer, these both layers are known as the serous pericardium. So the outer layer of the serous pericardium, this layer which is the outer layer of the serous pericardium, that one is known as the parietal layer of the serous pericardium, and the inner layer of the serous pericardium is known as the visceral layer of the serous pericardium, or also simply you can say that this is the epicardium. So the pericardium has outer layer which is known as the fibrous pericardium, which is a tough layer which protects the heart, and also the pericardium has serous pericardium, two serous pericardium. This outer serous pericardium is known as the parietal layer of serous pericardium, and the inner layer or the visceral layer of the serous pericardium, which is also known as the epicardium. And in between these parietal layer of serous pericardium and the visceral layer of the serous pericardium, there is a space. This blue one is the space. That space is known as the parietal cavity or the pericardial cavity. Sorry, that space is known as the pericardial cavity. And in this pericardial cavity, we have the fluid which is being secreted by the epicardium, and that is known as the pericardial fluid. So the pericardial fluid is being present in the pericardial space, and the pericardial space is the space between the parietal layer of the serous pericardium and the visceral layer of the serous pericardium. So these are the different layers of the pericardium. And if we go inside, then you can see this red one, the big muscle. That layer is known as the myocardium. So the myocardium is a big muscle layer, and which is responsible for the contraction of the heart. And the most deeper layer is known as the endocardium. So these are the different membranes and the surface features and layers of the heart. So the fluid, the pericardial cavity has the fluid which is known as the pericardial fluid, and that fluid gives the cushion to the heart, and it reduces the friction when the heart contracts. And there is a disease if there is a buildup or the accumulation of the pericardial fluid. If the pericardial fluid becomes more, or if there is abnormal excess fluid buildup within the pericardial space, then that disease is known as the cardiac tamponade. So this is the reason I have give emphasis on this pericardial fluid and the pericardial space. Why? Because there is a disease which is known with the name of the cardiac tamponade. And what is cardiac tamponade? Cardiac tamponade is the disease in which there is a abnormal buildup of the pericardial fluid within the pericardial cavity or the space. So because of that, the heart do not contract properly. Now, if we look into another diagram, the same pericardium, myocardium, and endocardium. So this is the heart. If we magnify this area, so you can see that outer layer is the pericardium, and the pericardium is further divided into the fibrous pericardium, this, and the parietal pericardium, and that is known as the visceral pericardium, and the visceral pericardium is also known as the epicardium. And that big muscle is known as the myocardium, and which is made up of largely cardiac muscle cells, and it is a contraction of the myocardium that pumps the blood through the heart and into the major arteries, and that layer is known as the endocardium. So the pericardium, myocardium, and the endocardium, these are the layers of the heart.